Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another Tnooz webinar, supported this time and again by Amadeus. Thank you very much to Amadeus for supporting another one of our webinars. We've got a really good one lined up for you today. How technology is revolutionizing the traveler's experience. Quite a grand title and broad brush stuff, but we hope over the next hour or so to cover off what we think is a really interesting and exciting time for how technology is really influencing and, as we say, hopefully revolutionizing the traveler experience. You know, very much from the very beginning of the planning process, people, you know, consumers, travelers use tools that are inspired, you know, try to get them to really kind of get invigorated about their travel experience. And now, to use a phrase that Amadeus started using a couple of years ago, the always connected traveller really must be on the minds of all those in the industry, whether they are in the transportation end, in the accommodation end, or in the experiences end, to see how they kind of grapple and think about reaching these travellers in the years ahead. So, and as we always say, the customer experience is actually key. That's the reason why they go travelling. It's the experience that they have, whether that's the experience on a flight, whether it's in the hotel, or it's the stuff that they do once they're there. So, as I said, over the next 55 minutes or so, we're going to explore some of these issues and hopefully get to a stage where everyone can start contributing and sending in their questions. We'll go through a little bit in a minute. So as I said, I'm Kevin May. I'm the co-founder and editor of Tnooz.com. I'm joined behind the scenes, as always, by Quinn, who's my co-founder and the CEO. You can see there, he's the glamorous-looking one. We are your hosts. And on the panel today, we have Alix Arguelles from Amadeus. She's the VP of Online Account Management and Consulting Services. We have Cheryl Reynolds, who's the Manager for Distribution and Sales Planning at Virgin America. And we're joined also by Joyce, who's the CEO of Rezgo and also one of our contributors, nodes as we call them, here at Tnooz.
So we're going to continue on with our second poll here. We'll get that loaded up for you in a moment. So what do you believe are the primary, what do you believe to be the primary requirement for travel shoppers in 2013? Is it speed of online experience, ease of online booking tools, quality of results, or the ability to book on any device, anytime, anywhere? So thank you for those votes. A few more seconds. Okay, let's share the results. Pretty even split among three of those. 28% of you think ease of online booking tools is most important. 32% quality of results, and 34% ability to book on any device, anytime, anywhere. So maybe that will give Alix a little context for her opening remarks in a moment. Thank you very much for that, and we'll be back with some more polls throughout the presentation. So with that, we'd like to throw it to you, Alix Arguelles, to talk a little bit about the traveler's experience. Over to you.
Thanks, Gene. I really appreciate that. First, I have to tell you that on poll number 2, I think you were missing an answer, which is really all of the above, because I think all of the items that you showed were critical. But if we can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll be walking you guys through the buying experience and what a traveler is looking for when they're actually purchasing the travel, what kind of technology they're looking for, and what's really the key points that are important to them, not only from an industry expert, but also from a traveler that buys all of their travel online. So if we can go ahead to the next slide. I think one of the most important things is the demand for flexibility, and it's not just about being able to buy on any device. It's really, you know, the ability for them to buy at any time they want to, how they want to, and of course the where being the device. Now, when we look at the devices, it's not just as simple as, okay, we're on all devices, there should be a consistency across the sites to ensure that the traveler feels comfortable if they're going to it from, you know, their phone to a PC to a tablet. There should be some sort of consistency there. There should be no limitations either in the functionality. A lot of times you see that when they're on the full, let's say, you know, website, it's got a lot more richer functionality than when you go to a mobile device. There's nothing I hate more than when I'm going to a device on my iPad and all of a sudden it reroutes me to a mobile site that has much less functionality. So I think it's very important that we ensure that across the devices the same level of functionality is there. I also want to talk a bit about apps. Now, you know, I'm of the type of person who doesn't believe an app is absolutely necessary. However, a mobile-enabled website is. So for those who haven't gone through the trouble of building an app, if you've got a mobile-enabled website that, again, has the full rich functionality, I think that's more than enough. You just want to be able to give your travelers or your customers the ability to buy however they want to. Now, Jean and Kevin, you guys recently posted an infographic that Monetate did that said about 78% of consumers are planning trips online and 40% of those are actually booking using tablets. So that number has increased significantly. So when we think about those things, we have to keep them in mind as we're looking at the different devices and how we want to present ourselves. So Jean, if we can go ahead and go to the next slide. The other thing is the need for speed, and a lot of that comes from the fact that so much of this has moved to a mobile device. The mobile device is something that I guess tries our patience a bit. No one has the patience to look at a smaller screen and then sit there and wait. Those interstitial pages are a thing of the past. You know, heavens forbid we see an hourglass on a mobile device. People will just get bored and move on to the next thing. So I think it's very important to have that need for speed. And of course, when we're looking at travel and we're looking at purchasing travel, the need for speed really translates into the ability to have instant results and products that don't flood the consumer with information, because again, they don't have a lot of time on their hands. They're in a hurry. They're, you know, maybe walking down the street as they're making a booking, so they don't want to get flooded with information. They want to be able to see exactly what they need, you know, book that right away and kind of keep it very clean. So I think that that's also quite important. If we go to the next slide, I think the other thing is that consumers are getting a little frustrated. I know I do. You want to kind of tell some of the providers, don't you know me by now? I've been buying on you in the past. You know, there's so much information out there. And that's where really the big data comes into play and how we can mine that data to present results that are more relevant to the end user. I mean, I'll tell you a little story about myself. I living in Miami, I travel on American quite a bit. And every time I go to the kiosk to print my boarding pass, it asks me if I want to buy a day pass to the Admirals Club. I'm a member of the Admirals Club. It frustrates me. It should know that already, and it shouldn't offer me something that I already have. So I think it's important that the providers start to know their customers. Now, knowing the customer is not just, you know, mining the social data, which is, you know, the buzzwords that are out there, but it's really looking at past buying behaviors. You know, if these are repeat customers to you and you have past buying behaviors, you can actually kind of tailor the results to them and ensure that those results and all the business logic that you can gather, be it from the social media or from somewhere else, be applied to the actual shopping process, and so that the results are much more relevant to the end user. So I think that that's also very, very important. Now, if we go to the next slide, what that results in is a happy traveler. And so if you start off your trip by being happy because the buying experience was easy and you were able to do it exactly the way you want to do it, it's going to leave a much better taste in your mouth as you start that vacation or that business trip or whatever. I think that's really important, to just start the process well. We see a lot of people that are now saying that they're trying to revolutionize online travel because it's broken. But in essence, I don't think it's really broken. I think if we keep in mind the three main topics we talked about, the end result will be a happy traveler. So with that, Jean or Kevin, if Kevin's back, I turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Alix, and apologies to everybody there. We had, as Jean said, some technical issues. So, interestingly, Alix, we did have an article on Tnooz last week that talked about that very thing, about travel planning not actually being broken, and I strongly urge people to go and have a read of that. It's from early last week. So, thank you very much again, Alix. We'll be back to you shortly. Just a reminder, everybody, that we do have a segment in the webinar set aside so everyone can ask questions. We've already had quite a few come in, but you can submit questions to us as always by hitting the questions button, which is should be on the right hand side of the dashboard as you look at it now. So let's have our third poll, please, Jean. What would massively enhance the airline experience for passengers in the coming years? Ability to stay connected, higher quality, brackets, cheaper meals and refreshments, improved airport check-in process, or just better online services before a flight? If you would like to cast your votes, please, that would be great. Okay, and let's have those results up now, please, Jean. Okay, and the results are 44% want the ability to stay connected during a flight. 29% improved airport check-in process. 1 in 5 of you are saying better online services before a flight, and only 7% want high quality meals or indeed cheaper meals. So thank you very much to everybody for voting. I'm now going to introduce Cheryl Reynolds. As I said earlier, she's from Virgin America. She's tuning in today from San Francisco. Cheryl, before you get started, the results of that poll, were they particularly surprising? Is 44% of people believing that in-flight connectivity is the must thing that they want these days? Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. We definitely see that our guests love to be connected to Wi-Fi, and that's why we've definitely made that a priority. So not surprising at all.
And obviously there was the announcement last week, or was it the week before, with regards to keeping devices on and things like that?
Yeah, I think it continues to show that we have heard, not only us, but the FAA and others, on how important devices are to our guests when they're in the air, and any enhancements that we can continue to make are definitely a priority.
Indeed. So didn't want to side foot you there, but over to you. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, Cheryl.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Just wanted to kind of introduce a little bit about Virgin America for those that don't know. On the next slide, Virgin America has been around for 6+ years now, and we have really focused on the in-flight experience, and we've won many awards. A lot of these are all user-related awards that have voted. So really focusing on the guest experience and the in-flight experience, and using that to kind of differentiate ourselves amongst our competition. So on the next slide, just for those, again, that don't know, we are based in San Francisco with a base in LA as well. We really fly the main routes throughout the US. We want to fly, we want to take people where they want to go. So we really focus on the core business markets and the main markets where people want to fly. We currently have 53 airplanes and looking to grow with another 40 airplanes over the next 8 years. On the next slide, really talking about our cabins of service. So really have 3 main cabins of service. So the main cabin is the general experience, really looking to not only improve the flight experience of first or business class or premium economy, but really for all guests. So we have seatback TVs for main cabin, leather seats, Wi-Fi on every plane, and then we also have our main cabin select product, which is kind of our premium economy product, which gives you everything in main cabin with additional leg room and free food and drink. And then of course we have our first class product as well with 8 white leather seats. So just to give everyone a little bit of background about Virgin America, what we're about, for those of you that may not know or may not have had a chance to fly us yet. On the next slide, we talk about some of our Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is very much a part of our DNA, being based in San Francisco and in the Silicon Valley. Our guests in particular want to be more connected, I think, than average. So really goes back to even what Alix said about the always connected traveler. We definitely see that. People definitely want to be connected while in flights. And not just being connected, but power is important as well. So there's nothing more frustrating than having Wi-Fi, but then your battery runs low, and halfway through the flight and you're done. So we do offer not just Wi-Fi throughout on every aircraft, but power at every seat. Another thing that's kind of interesting for those of you that may not have done it yet, but your first experience of buying an airline ticket while you're in the air is kind of a neat experience if you haven't done so yet. So again, always being connected, looking at ways to better maximize your time while traveling. On the next slide, we talk more about the whole flight experience as well in terms of food and drink. So one of the things that makes Virgin America unique is that all of our ordering for food is through the seat back monitor. So the crew will come through once during the beginning of the flight and offering drinks. Can't guarantee that Richard Branson will be doing it every flight, but it has known to happen. But otherwise, during the flight, at any point, if you're hungry or want a drink, you simply order on the seat back monitor, and the flight attendant will bring it out to you. So really trying to, again, enhance that guest experience, allow people to eat and drink when they want, not just when the cart comes around. On the next slide, we talk about entertainment. So in addition to just movies, which we have a whole series of movies, live TV is also very important. So we have 24 channels of live TV that our guests will stay connected, just like being at home with your iPad on your lap while you're watching TV, with many devices going. So not just kind of dead time, but great time relaxing in the air. There's also something to be said if you are traveling during either a major sporting event or major political event to watch in unison as the whole plane is watching the same channel at once and cheering or following what's going on is also a really unique experience. On the next slide, we talk more about how we are taking this in-flight experience to be a little bit more social. So one of the things that we offer is seat-to-seat chat. So if you're seated either a little bit further away from your other traveling companions, we allow a seat-to-seat chat functionality where you can stay connected during the flight without having to get up. And one of the other aspects we added just recently, just in the last few months, is the ability to not only purchase a drink for yourself, but if you wanted to buy a drink for somebody else. So if you either have a colleague or maybe someone you would like to talk to or get to know a little bit more, we have the ability for you to send a drink to another seat. Okay, on the next slide, I think we talk a little bit about what does the future bring, and really I think Alix also kind of hit on it when being offered a pass to the Admirals Club when she's already a member. I think the airlines can definitely work a lot, and it's not just American, but all of us to improve this experience, and how do we take the technology that we have and make it more personal. So wouldn't it be great when you sit down at your seat that your seat knows who you are and knows the food selections that you usually like, or remembers your playlist of the music that you created from last time. So these are some of the things that we're looking forward to exploring in the future to how to even better that in-flight travel experience. Okay, and I think with that, I will turn it back over to Kevin.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Good to see that you're reaching out to that kind of some of the technical advances of what is going on in the airline industry, and we'll be coming to some of those, I'm sure, during the Q&A. So just a reminder on that, we have had quite a few questions in already, but you can quiz our panel in about 10 minutes or so by submitting a question using the questions button, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen. So before we get to our final speaker today, we're going to have also a final poll. So Jean, if you can put the fourth poll up there. In a destination, what technology would most improve the traveller experience? Freely available Wi-Fi in hotels and attractions, ability to search and book things to do, digital concierge services with accommodation providers, or on-demand digital guides and tools. I have a feeling I know what the answer to this one is going to be, but in theory it kind of does relate to some of the others, so perhaps chicken and egg. But let's just see what the audience is thinking on this. Okay, just a couple of moments, and then Jean, if you'd like to put those results up, please. Okay, not a huge surprise. 61% say freely available Wi-Fi at hotels and attractions. A tie for second place there, 14%, ability to search and book things to do. And, excuse me, on-demand digital guides and tools, and just 1 in 10 of you saying digital concierge services with accommodation providers. So thank you very much. And if we can go through to the slides. And as always, delighted to introduce Stephen Joyce as the CEO of Rezgo. Stephen is based in Vancouver, and Rezgo is a software system for tour and activity suppliers. So good morning to you, very good morning. Early good morning to you, Stephen. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to say as always, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And yeah, as far as that poll is concerned, I think one of the other things to consider, not just the free Wi-Fi, which I think is important, is cheap data. So roaming data is obviously a big issue too. I mean, you can alleviate a lot of that with Wi-Fi hotspots or freely available Wi-Fi, but certainly the lower cost of mobile data is a big thing as well. So probably a lot of you have experienced this, but really when you think about traveling and the first experience that you have in destination, for most travelers, the first experience is walking out of that airport and ending up in potentially a lineup like this one, waiting for a cab. And what's interesting is that the in-destination experience, as far as the initial in-destination experience, is still very manual. A lot of the having to wait for a cab, if you've pre-booked a shuttle, may be better, and we're starting to see a little bit of that with booking things like shuttles during the rest of your booking process online. If you're booking through an airline or booking through an OTA, you can book airport shuttles. And we're starting to see a little bit more of that, but for the most part, it's the cabs and the car services. And we're starting to at least see some innovation around this, especially on the business side with Uber and those sort of car for hire services, where when you come out of the airport, you can book that black car via your iPhone. Now, again, if the airport offers Wi-Fi or if you have cheap data, then you can use that app to do it. But if you're a leisure traveler and you're not willing to turn on your phone, and according to the recent Focusrite research that was done on in destination in Europe specifically, although there was the previous one that was done in North America, U.S. specifically, only 20% of these leisure travelers, of European, what they call active travelers, actually use their mobile data when they travel. So you're talking about 80% of them not having their phones turned on for data, which means they're relying on Wi-Fi at the airport. So if you're looking at connecting with these services like Uber and these other ones that use apps, if there's no mobile data, there's no access to that app, in which case they're going to end up in this line. So let's pop over to the next slide. Now, once they get to the hotel, again, if the hotel doesn't offer free Wi-Fi if it's something that they have to pay for, and again, if they don't have mobile, chances are they're going to look for this rack. And all of you have seen this rack, I'm sure, at hotels and tourism centers. This is still an important way for travelers to search and research things to do in their destinations, especially if they're not pre-booking. And a lot of them are not pre-booking. Still, 50% of the bookings that are done same day in destination. So they're going to paper-based brochures to look for things to do. Now, they may do some research if they're in the hotel and they have Wi-Fi. They may do that research on their mobile phones. But less than 5% of these operators have systems that allow for mobile ticketing. So they're still not able to necessarily complete the booking process when they're on their mobile devices. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, over 50% of the activities are still currently being booked the same day. And they're not using their mobile phones to do this. It's still very much a manual process for a lot of these travelers. So, I think one opportunity that we see in the in-destination market is there are a number of apps. Viator, for example, has a very good iPhone and Android app. So does Get Your Guide, with the ability to book activities in destination. But for the most part, unless there are things like hop-on, hop-off buses, which generally have a very low pre-booking ratio, which means that most people just walk up and buy a ticket to do the hop-on, hop-off. They don't necessarily buy it in advance. The ones that do require advanced booking, so they have limited availability and things like that, tend to have a 24 to 48 hour cutoff window, which means they're not being booked same day. They're being generally booked by a concierge or an activity desk at the resort or at the location. So that's something else to keep in mind. Next slide here. This is an interesting one. Only 3% of the activities that are currently booked, period, are being booked on mobile. So, and I say only. I mean that's actually quite a large number when you consider the whole, but it's still a very small amount. And again, the primary reason for that is because less than 5% can receive their vouchers on their mobile devices, and there's a lack of real-time availability for these products. So there's not a lot of incentive to book online. Although 25% of travelers that travel with their mobile devices, and in Europe it's 3 out of 4 European travelers travel with a smartphone or tablet, which is a huge number. I mean, 75% of travelers are out there with their mobile devices. If I can use my family as an example, when we travel, we all have our respective iPads and iPhones. So, we're traveling with multiple devices when we go. So our mobile demands are quite a bit different. But, I mean, of course, we're kind of a geeky family, so it's to be expected. But that said, these are travelers that are traveling with their mobile devices, and yet they're not able to do the things that they want to do as far as booking online on their mobile devices, because the operators don't have the ability to support it. And the last slide here, I think this is the last slide, is that, actually no, sorry, it's the slide after this is the last one. The biggest barrier, as I mentioned, is the cost of data in these destinations. For the most part, as I mentioned before, only 19% are using mobile data when they travel. So when they're in destination, if they are sharing, like this woman is doing, taking a photo, they're taking the photos with their mobile devices, because that's what they're using as their cameras in a lot of cases, or their videos, and they're waiting to go back to the hotel and connect to the Wi-Fi there in order to update or do whatever they're doing. So even though there's an opportunity in destination to be much more connected than they are, most travelers, and especially on the leisure side and outside of the U.S., if you're traveling within the U.S., obviously you have the advantage of having local data. But once you're outside of the U.S. or you're in Europe, and you're dealing with international roaming costs, then even though there's a real opportunity to stay connected, most travelers are actually not connected all the time. They're connected when they go into a coffee shop or when they go back to the hotel, and so they're doing offline activities like taking photos and documenting their experiences on their phones, and then they're connecting when they go back to their either their hotel or to areas where they have hotspots. And the last slide here, the biggest drawback and I think the biggest constraint on the supply side is that as this guy is kind of my representation of the atypical call center guy, is that you know, when you're in destination, the likelihood in terms of the mechanism that you're going to be using for booking is going to be this guy, right? You're not going to be using your mobile phone to actually do the booking. You may do a little bit of research on it. You may find the operator either on brochure, or you may find them using a local search. But when it actually comes time to book, you're going to be connecting either click to call, or you're going to be calling a local phone number, or potentially even going through a concierge in order to talk to the operator directly in order to do the booking. So there's a huge opportunity, I think, in the in-destination space to automate a lot of these processes and improve the customer experience with technology, but it really has to be kind of a grassroots movement. There has to be support for cheaper data and the ability to be always connected in destination, and we have to have the retailers and the operators in destination being able to support the demands of those always connected travelers. I think are the two things that I want to leave you with today. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen in Vancouver. I do like that picture there of the chap, the dipping his feet in the swimming pool. Right, so lots of people started sending in questions, so keep them coming. We will try to get to as many of them as we can over the next 20 minutes. If we don't get a chance to get to your question, don't worry, we do take a note of all of them, and we'll ask the panelists to come back to you all individually if they can. So, first of all, I mean, Alix, I wanted to ask you, I mean, you're overseeing to a certain degree a lot of all this stuff. You know, you have a position in the market where you're helping airlines and you're doing other things and agencies, and what you've been talking about is this always connected traveler. With your kind of overview of all this, then, where do you sense the industry is as a whole at the moment? Do they kind of get this idea that the always connected traveler is as important to them as just selling a ticket or selling a room? You know, do they understand that the experience and the journey is much more complete to the consumers than perhaps it once was before?
I think so, definitely. I mean, obviously there's always going to be some people that lag behind, but for the most part, in general, I think everyone has caught on. Now, it's whether they implement it right or not, and that's where it gets a little bit tricky. But even if you look at Amadeus and how we've started to expand, you know, instead of just being a GDS as we were many years ago, you know, we're really a technology company now, and we've expanded to not only do airline IT, but we do even airport IT now, where we've expanded into the big data arena and business intelligence. So all of that is along the lines of ensuring that all of the information that is needed at any step of the way is provided. So I think that for the most part, I would say yes, people get it, and now what they're trying to do is get up to speed so that, you know, whatever technology that they're offering is exactly what the traveler needs. Some might lag behind, but I think they definitely understand the importance.
And just a variation on that kind of question for you, Cheryl, of Virgin America. I mean, impressive some of the technological enhancements that you've been putting in there on your aircraft. I suspect you're not going to give me a figure, but I'm assuming that's quite an undertaking financially for an airline to do that. So therefore, is it maybe the airlines that are willing to take the risk because they understand that this is something that travellers are calling for, or is this something that you've said we should just do this? And where do you sense the wider aviation world on this particular subject?
Well, I think for an airline like Virgin America, who is relatively new, we have the ability to look at, now and moving forward, whereas some of the other airlines that have been around for a long time have a mix of fleets. It's difficult for them to invest when you have hundreds of airplanes. I also think product consistency is very important, and that's why each and every flight on Virgin America has the exact same features and functionality. In terms of cost, yes, there's certainly a cost and an investment in that, but in terms of the largest costs that airlines have, fuel and other things, it's really kind of a much smaller proportion to what you may think. So really, I think product consistency and our product allows us to really compete with the larger carriers that have the more established networks, the more established frequent flyer programs, and it's really what keeps us relevant.
Kev, this is Gene. I have a follow-up for her, if you don't mind. Equally impressed as Kevin, Cheryl, on especially on the seat-to-seat and other social community features that Virgin America has built in there. How are you guys going to, or are you prepared, or how will you prepare to be connected with the bring your own device crowd? One of the things that we are seeing is the migration away from in-hotel entertainment systems in favor of smartphones and iPads in the hands of an entire family or an entire fleet of colleagues on a trip. How will some of these features that you've built in integrate into those personal devices that people bring aboard?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's definitely an area that we have thought of. People love to use their own device. We are always looking at our in-flight entertainment system and the onboard experience as a whole. And it is definitely something that we are keeping in mind and working towards as over the next few years, where we look to enhance that even more, knowing that travelers do want to use their own devices. So I don't necessarily see us kind of removing the seatback TVs because of all the ordering and other things that people like to do, but interacting with their own devices is definitely something top of mind for us as well.
And just on that point, there was an exactly the same question that someone did have about using their own devices. So, Jean, you covered that one off very nicely. Just very quickly, Cheryl, before we move to Stephen here, the seat-to-seat chat function, it sounds kind of cute. Is it widely used?
I think it is used, and you do have to kind of give permission that, understanding what you're doing, and the person on the other end has the ability to deny the chat if they don't want to receive it. But I think it is probably used more than you may think, especially if you're traveling with someone and you may not be seated together, especially a colleague or something else.
Right, okay. And Stephen, just while we're on this kind of state of the nation side of things, I mean, in your market, which is, I guess, infinitely more fragmented than the airline industry, amazingly, and to a lesser extent more fragmented than the hotel sector, I mean, where do you see your supplier customers, and you're talking to them and you're evangelizing about things like mobile and payments and things like that? Are they often kind of scratching their heads and saying, well, we're just kind of not ready for that yet? Travellers, once they're in destination, are still wanting to reach us in the way it's been for many years, or are they starting to sense that this is the way it's going?
They are starting to. I mean, it's taken for us. It's taken 5 or 6 years of ongoing education to get the operators to kind of recognize that there are greater revenue opportunities if your inventory is in a form that it can be booked electronically. And we're really talking about operators that are still using, for the most part, paper and pen, or they may be as sophisticated as using Microsoft Excel to manage their schedules. So we're not talking about a particularly high-tech group. There are some that are on the younger operators, the ones that are starting their tour operation businesses, and we tend to work with a number of those. Those are the ones that when they start their businesses recognize that they need to be online. They need to have a good mobile interface. They need to have an electronic point of sale and things like that. So they're already thinking about that. The ones that are coming up and starting their businesses or have only been doing their businesses for a few years are already thinking that way. The ones that have kind of grown up with Gmail and grown up with Google Docs and these other apps and iPhones and stuff are expecting those things. It's the either the larger ones or the older operators that have been very comfortable running their businesses on paper or using Microsoft Excel on Windows, whatever, for the last who knows how many years, and are kind of resisting that change. But we're starting to see it. We're starting to see it now more than certainly than we did 5 years ago. So there is promise.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So let's roll back to the beginning of this process, because the traveller experience isn't just what they're doing in the air and what they're doing in resort, and it's very much about the research and the search and the booking elements. So Alix, I guess this is one for you, and this question came in from Bob, and he says, one of the opening slides showed a graphic with a shopping cart. And he says, but ironically, there are no true shopping carts on travel or OTA websites and applications, such as the shopping cart kind of functionality that we see on Amazon. And he asks, why is that? Is it a technological difficulty? Is it business reasons? Or is there just not the demand for such kind of functionality in the travel space?
Well, I'd have to start off by disagreeing a bit, actually. There are some true shopping carts in the travel industry, and those that don't implement a true shopping cart is really to ensure that they get the inventory that the user has selected. But I have seen some out there. So for instance, if somebody is shopping for flights and they've gone through the process of pricing them out and they know that they want them, so they add them to the shopping cart, normally what an OTA would do is they'd already start to kind of hold that seat to ensure that that seat is not lost. But many, more and more actually, are not holding that seat and are using it as a true shopping cart kind of environment. But I guess, I mean, if I look at the shopping cart methodology and I trying to understand what Bob was referring to, I guess if you're thinking of adding, a whole bunch of flights and then, removing some flights, then yes, I agree. I know that on the OTA side, that's not done too much. On the agency side, it's being done more and more in the traditional agency. So there's really no reason why we can't expand that from an agency desktop into an online environment, so that they could kind of pick and choose what flights and then figure out what works best for them and then get rid of them afterwards. But for hotels, for cars, for the rest of that, definitely it's more of a shopping cart environment for sure. Flights is really the only place that it gets a little bit more difficult. And again, has a lot to do with the airline logic in terms of pricing, because some airlines will implement married segment logic. So saying that these two flights have to go together to get the price, so that if you start to play around with a lot of the flights, then that married segment logic would in theory be broken, and the price would not be applicable anymore. So I think that maybe that has something to do with why the true shopping cart isn't available for an end user in that sense.
Okay,
Kevin,
sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, can I jump in on that one? The shopping cart experience. I think it really depends on when the customers have the intention to book what it is that they're booking. So if we look at the in-destination experiences for as one part of that potentially shopping cart experience, I mean, the ideal solution, in sort of the mind of the wholesaler who's got all of this product on their website, would be that a customer comes along and books their air and their hotel and books their shuttle or car service and all their in-destination stuff, and they book it all at once, pay for it with their credit card, and get a whole bunch of vouchers at the end of the day, and their trip is booked. And it's, everybody's happy, and they toast with champagne when they're done. But that doesn't really happen. And what we've found, looking across the suppliers that we have within our system, is that customers are actually booking their in-destination experiences much, much closer to their day of travel. So they're not even, when they book their airfare or they potentially book their hotel, they may book that out, weeks or months in advance, but they don't generally book their in-destination experiences until even as close as, I mean, 80% of the bookings that are made within the system are done within a week. So we're talking about bookings that are done within 1 week of the travel date. So it's when their intention to book the activities tends to be much closer to the date of travel than when they actually intend to book their flights, because I think they realize they can't book a flight 7 days before because they're going to pay way more than if they book it far in advance. But generally the pricing associated with the activities doesn't change that much as you get closer to the activity. So I think there's a different point in the purchase process that happens for these different segments.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions from Joanne here, and I'll go with the slightly loaded one first. Joanne asks, do you think, and this is to the panel as a whole, so we'll start with you, Cheryl. Do you think we will see the day when even fare pricing is customized based on the customer profile and value? Now, this is, I guess, is kind of leading in with, the wider experience. They want to feel like they're having a personal service. So do you think we will get to the day, Cheryl, where we will have kind of customized pricing and fare pricing for passengers, for example, on airlines?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we will get there, and I think that's what a lot of the initiatives surrounding NDC and some of the other things are going out against, is that airlines do want to offer, the right product to the right people at the right time, and I think customized pricing is definitely a part of that.
Okay, and Alix, as a GDS that observes this world and customized fare pricing, I'm sure it would have some technical challenges, but is it something that you think we will see in the future at all?
I think it's something that we cannot avoid, to be honest. As Cheryl said, that's pretty much one of the foundations of NDC, and being able for the airlines to provide the pricing that they want. Now, the question is, will that expand into the other verticals? As Stephen said earlier, it's very different when you look at flights, hotels, and then you look at the activity, entertainment, and destination events. So it's kind of interesting to see if it'll apply across the board. But for airlines, I think we have no alternative but to go that route eventually.
And I suppose, Stephen, if you're a small tour and activity supplier and someone is coming up to you, you can discount or customize the fare that you are, or the price that you're offering to people. But as soon as that gets into the world of technology, perhaps it's less easy to organize, because you don't have that ability to look at the whites of their eyes, and as they say, and barter with them almost.
Yeah, and you have to remember too that in-destination experiences are generally one-off purchases. So a family may go to a destination once. If they're going to Disneyland or something like that, they may go a few times. But generally speaking, they're only going to a place once. And if they're doing a tour, they're generally only doing that tour once in their life. Most of I think when we look at our data, 85 to 87% of the bookings are single. The customer is unique. So there's very little repeat customers on the tour and activity side. So being able, to have a tour operator say, "Oh, you're one of my loyal customers, so I'm going to give you a discount," that just really doesn't happen on the tour and activity side. They're one-off, customers. So knowing the customer is a little bit more difficult because you only really get one experience with them. So that there isn't that same level of personalization. I did want to comment on the airline side and the fare pricing. I think there is an opportunity there, but I think I think it was Alix that mentioned, if you're going to the kiosk and the airline doesn't even know that you have a loyalty program with them when you're checking in, the chances of being able to provide that customized fare pricing is pretty limited right now. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done on that recognition and tracking of the customer beforehand, before we can even get to that custom fare pricing. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done in the background before that can even happen.
Okay, we're piling through as many of these questions as we can, and as I said earlier, apologies if we don't get to them. We will take a note of those. Another question here was, a lot of this is around data, as you said, Stephen, and I guess we'll come to you on this particular point. I mean, this is Joanne again asks, how important do you think, leveraging customer insights and real-time analytics and recommendation engines and those kind of things, it's the kind of stuff that we talk about on T-News all the time, but actually doing that, if you're a provider, is perhaps maybe a little bit harder than we as technologists and journalists perhaps make out. I mean, how can anyone in the industry start to really kind of grapple around this analytics so that they can provide a better end-to-end experience, in inverted commas?
Is that question to me?
Yes, please, Steve.
Oh, okay. Personally, I think the only way that you can really use that data is to go to aggregators of that data and work with them to be able to get larger sets, right? I mean, if we look at individual providers, the chance that an individual, and I'm talking the tour and activity providers, the chances that some small little business is going to have enough customer data in order to make decisions about personalization and recommendation are pretty slim. But if they're using a system like Rezgo or Tour CMS or whatever, that's an aggregated system, a software as a service that has hundreds and hundreds of operators on them, those systems are going to have aggregated data across a much larger set of customers that may be able to share that data with operators in a sanitized way that provides them with better access to recommendations and things like that. And I think the same is true on airlines and hotel sides. Individual providers are only going to have access to their customer data sets. And I think where the power comes in and where the opportunity comes in is to look at aggregated data across a much larger customer set and being able to apply those to your own business. And I think that means working with technology providers that have access to that data. So companies like Amadeus, for example.
Yeah, so thank you, Stephen. That was a perfect plug in there. No, but absolutely, I think I completely agree. When you're looking at the individual provider, there's only so much data that you can get. And a lot of providers are doing quite well with the data that they have. But to really be able to do, the type of analytics that a lot of people are talking about, then you definitely need more of an aggregated data across providers. And as Stephen said, obviously sanitized, so nothing, we're not giving away any trade secrets or anything, but it's very important to get that wider spread of data, that understanding of what's happening outside of each provider's little world.
And Cheryl, just on the same topic, I mean, presumably Virgin America is collecting reams of data, a lot more than they used to, about their passengers. I mean, how does that kind of feed into the kind of the selling process and the upselling process that you presumably you now do online, and maybe even after people have flown in with your CRM strategy and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's true. We're definitely collecting lots of data, and I think the process is improving as we have more products and bundles to offer. But again, it's how do we use that data to make it effective, and not just how do we use that data, but how do we prioritize this with many other projects that we're working on. These types of projects weigh up against starting new routes or fuel savings or other teammate projects. So it's not that I don't think airlines or other travel suppliers don't understand the value or the importance of this segment, but it's how do we prioritize it with everything else that we're doing with limited resources and budgets.
Okay, thank you. We're just going to wrap up now, so we'll start with you, Stephen. I mean, we're generally a forward-looking kind of publication in terms of the things that we write about. If the five of us, including Jean, were sat here in a couple of years' time, do you sense that we would still be having the same discussion, that we're still trying to drag the industry along with us, or I say the royal we here? I mean, or do you think that things may have progressed over the next couple of years, or do you think will we still be evangelizing?
Oh, I think there's always opportunity to evangelize. I think there will always be things that we can improve on. In 5 years, I don't know, you know, on the airline side, I think that's things tend not to move quite as fast as some other areas, because like I said, I think there's a lot of background work that has to be done, and I don't know if 5 years is enough time to necessarily do that. Certainly in other areas, I think in terms of you know, improving Wi-Fi connectivity, in terms of providing cheaper data so that the travelers are more connected. I think hopefully within 5 years we'll see you know, better access to that, which I think will change the landscape. If we're moving from 19% of mobile travelers using mobile data to, you know, 75% of those travelers using mobile data, I think that's going to have a huge impact in terms of the demand for apps and tools when customers are traveling and are connected all the time. I think that'll have a huge impact.
Okay, just very conscious of the time here, so we'll go to you finally, Alix. I mean, as we said right at the beginning here, you do have an influence in many parts of this, you know, this customer journey. I mean, and which is obviously gives you a huge opportunity to help them. I mean, but do you sense in a couple of years' time that we will be having the same discussions, or do you think we'll have progressed on to something else, new challenges and new problems and new opportunities for people?
I think we'll have progressed onto something new. I mean, if you look at the travel industry, if you look at what we have today and what we had 5 years ago, the advancements have been huge. You know, going to the, you know, speaking about mobile devices alone, the movement to mobile devices and the fact that so many travel providers now have either mobile websites or their own apps, it's just amazing how far we've come in 5 years. So I think that probably in the next 5, it'll be something different that we're talking about. I'm sure a lot of it will still revolve around data and personalization, but I think it's going to be the next step of that.
Okay, thank you very much. We're always conscious of everybody's time here, so we're trying to finish as close to the top of the hour as we can. So thank you very much to our panel, Alix, Cheryl, and Stephen, for helping us out here today. As I said right at the top of the webinar, we've recorded the entire show for you today, and all those slides that the panel shared with us. We'll hope to have all of those up on tnews.com within the next 6 or 7 hours or so, maybe a little bit later, depending on how things go with the news, which is what we do. And obviously, we have taken a note of all the questions that we didn't get around to, unfortunately, but we'll send those to the panel later on, and hopefully they'll get back to you forthwith in the next couple of days. So finally, thank you very much to everybody for tuning in, and obviously a big thank you, as always, to Amadeus for supporting one of our webinars. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks to the panel again, and most importantly, thank you to everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks ever so much.
The organizer